President Donald Trump sparked intense controversy on Thanksgiving Day after issuing a late-night social media statement in which he vowed to permanently pause migration from what he described as poorer countries. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The unusually long and forcefully worded message, posted to his Truth Social platform, echoed his long-standing anti-immigration stance, but came at a moment of heightened national tension following a deadly shooting involving 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. The incident, which occurred Wednesday, involved a 29-year-old Afghan national who had resettled in the United States after assisting the CIA during the Afghanistan War. He is now facing charges in connection with the attack. The 2 guardsmen, Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, 20, and Staff Sergeant Polly, Andrew Wolf, 24, were deployed to the Capitol under Trump's orders. Beckstrom died from her injuries shortly before the president delivered a video address to U.S. troops on Thursday evening, while Wolf remains in critical condition. The suspect, who was also wounded when officers returned fire, is currently hospitalized with injuries not believed to be life-threatening. In the wake of the shooting, Trump unleashed a sweeping condemnation of U.S. immigration policies, calling the current system an existential threat to public safety, declaring that only reverse migration can fully cure the situation. Trump suggested that the country must take drastic steps to remove individuals he views as dangerous. He ended the post with a sharp holiday message, writing, "Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all, except those that hate, steal, murder, and destroy everything that America stands for. You won't be here for long." While Trump has frequently used heated rhetoric about immigration, his Thanksgiving message appeared even more extreme than usual. His demand for a near-total halt to migration contradicts America's long-standing identity as a nation built and sustained by immigrants. Economists and immigration experts warn that such a move would carry profound economic consequences, especially as the U.S. labor force currently includes nearly 31 million foreign-born workers, according to federal data. Despite these statistics, Trump doubled down on claims that immigrants are responsible for a disproportionate share of crime in the United States. On Truth Social, he alleged that most foreign-born residents are receiving welfare or come from what he called failed nations, prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. He blamed them for crime spikes across the country, even though law enforcement records consistently show that the majority of crime is committed by U.S. citizens. Those claims are not supported by existing research. A review published last year in the Annual Review of Criminology found that the belief that immigration increases crime continues to falter under the weight of the evidence. The analysis examined decades of data and concluded that communities with higher immigrant populations do not experience higher rates of crime or delinquency. Additional research released in 2023 found that immigrants are 60% less likely to be incarcerated than people born in the United States, extending a trend that has held true for approximately 150 years. Nevertheless, Trump's post made clear that his Thanksgiving message was not intended to engage in policy debate. The White House, responding through its rapid response social media account, called the message one of the most important messages ever released by President Trump, though it did not elaborate on the rationale behind that assessment. Trump also announced that he intends to terminate millions of admissions made during Joe Biden's presidency, signaling an expansive plan to invalidate prior immigration decisions. He pledged to end federal benefits and subsidies for non-citizens, pursue the denaturalization of individuals he believes undermine domestic tranquility, and deport people he considers non-compatible with Western civilization. He singled out Minnesota, claiming that immigrants from Somalia are completely taking over the state. In the same message, he used an outdated and offensive slur to insult Minnesota's governor, Tim Walz, who was the Democratic vice presidential nominee last year. The president's rhetoric escalated further on Wednesday night, when he called for a full reinvestigation of all Afghan refugees who entered the United States during the Biden administration. His comments appeared to coincide with the news of the shootings in Washington, though Trump did not directly reference the attack in his social media posts. On Thursday, U.S. News' Centers at Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Joseph Edlow announced that the agency would intensify its screening procedures for migrants from 19 unspecified high-risk countries. While Edlow did not list the nations involved, the administration had already imposed travel bans on citizens from 12 countries in June, and implemented restricted travel from 7 others on national security grounds. When asked by a reporter whether he held all Afghans responsible for the Washington shooting, Trump denied doing so, but added, "We've had a lot of problems with Afghans." His remark reflects a broader political climate in which individual criminal cases involving migrants are frequently used to justify sweeping policy proposals. The shooting that prompted Trump's latest statements continues to be investigated. According to authorities, the suspect drove across the country to Washington before opening fire on the two National Guard members. The motive remains unclear. As the investigation unfolds, the incident has renewed debates over the vetting process for Afghan allies resettled in the United States after the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan. Trump's comments on Thanksgiving signal that immigration will continue to be one of his most dominant political themes, particularly as he confronts rising criticism over domestic security and national cohesion. His forceful vow to pause migration marks an escalation in rhetoric that has already drawn scrutiny from legal analysts, immigration advocates, and members of Congress who warn that implementing such measures would reshape American policy on a scale not seen in generations. Donald Trump's Thanksgiving proclamation was immediate and far-reaching, rippling through Washington and across state capitals as lawmakers, advocacy groups, and security officials reacted to what many interpreted as one of the most sweeping anti-immigration declarations of his presidency. Within hours of the post circulating online, Democrats and some moderate Republicans expressed alarm over the implications of a policy that effectively calls for shutting the door to migrants from dozens of nations and potentially revoking legal status for many already residing in the country. Senior Democrats on Capitol Hill argued that Trump's message represented an attempt to stoke public fear in the emotional aftermath of a tragedy, instead of fostering unity at a moment when the country was processing the death of a young National Guard member. Several pointed out that the attack under investigation was perpetrated by a single individual whose background remains complex and under review, emphasizing that one case cannot serve as a proxy for an entire community of refugees who cooperated with U.S. forces during wartime. According to multiple members of Congress familiar with briefings from defense officials, thousands of Afghans who resettled in the United States did so only after undergoing extensive vetting, including multi-agency background checks, biometric screening, and verification from American military units they had assisted. Republican responses fractured along familiar lines. Hardline immigration critics praised the president's remarks as a necessary correction to what they argue is a national security crisis exacerbated under the Biden administration. These lawmakers reiterated their belief that the rapid evacuation from Afghanistan left too many unknowns in the refugee vetting process, despite intelligence officials stating repeatedly that the majority of applicants were rigorously screened. Yet other Republicans, particularly those in districts with significant immigrant populations or labor-dependent industries, raised concerns about the economic shockwaves that a permanent pause on migration could unleash. They quietly warned that curbing immigration during a period of widespread labor shortages could hinder growth, reduce workforce stability, and strain industries already struggling to find workers. Outside the political sphere, Trump's remarks triggered strong responses from immigration advocates, civil rights groups, and policy Many argued that characterizing millions of immigrants as criminals or dependents on public welfare contradicted decades of empirical research, including government data showing lower rates of violent crime among foreign-born residents when compared with native-born citizens. Analysts at several research centers emphasized that the president's depiction of immigrants relied heavily on broad generalizations that have been repeatedly disproven, yet remain politically potent. Economists also began weighing in, noting that foreign-born workers in industries such as agriculture, healthcare, construction, and service sectors play a critical role in sustaining the U.S. economy. A sudden halt to immigration, they warned, could intensify already mounting workforce shortages, drive inflationary pressures, and disrupt essential supply chains, particularly in regions dependent on seasonal or specialized labor. Millions of admissions from the Biden era could be terminated sparked additional questions from legal scholars, who pointed out that revoking approved immigration cases en masse would likely face immediate legal challenges and raise constitutional concerns about due process.